Hello there, this is the 13th Baz tutorial. Today I'm going to make a polyphonic synthesizer using an object called Polytilde, which in particular Sonorum73 suggested somebody could benefit from knowing about Polytilde, which is probably true because it's like the way to make things polyphonic, generally speaking. Alright, first thing I'm going to do is create a little pretend MIDI situation using a key object. So I'm going to type an N on my keyboard here for a new object with the word key in there. I'm going to make this key object like a note on message. So I'll make another new object. I'm going to make a random velocity, because obviously the keys on my computer keyboard don't have velocity, believe it or not. I'll put that in there. The key object into a trigger I bang. So this bang that I've just created, this is trigger. I'm not sure if we've been over it. Trigger outputs whatever you type in here, I, B, F, F for float, B for bang. So this outlet is a bang that I'm going to use to trigger my random velocity. Random 64, let's say, can be the range of my randomness, and I guess some kind of base value, so a new object with plus 30, so we'll have the lowest velocity will be 30. I'm doing all of this. Here's another new object. We'll pack this together into a list to make it like a note message. And then on the other side I'm going to have a key up object. I'll just duplicate that over there, and this will be my note offs. Alright, so this is just my computer keyboard way of making notes. A new object with a pack, and this pack is with no argument over here. We'll be packing zeros, and so this will be like a note off. Note off. This would be like a note on, so computer keyboard can be a musical instrument too. Of course, this is all just because I don't have a MIDI keyboard hooked up. If you have such a thing, maybe you'll need to make a new object and use what would be called a note in, which will get notes in from your MIDI keyboard styling. Alright, and to do the same as what I've done here, I guess you would just pack these note pitch, as it says there, which is actually not very accurate. It's a note number, and a velocity. You would pack those into a list. So this here is the computer keyboard version of this, if you happen to have a MIDI keyboard hooked up here. Next I'm going to make the object that will actually play back the polyphonic synthesizer-ness, and for that we are going to use the object called Polytilde, but we first need some patcher that will be loaded into the Polytilde, because Polytilde really just is a collection of or a number of instances of a single patcher. So I'm making a new patcher, Command N on my keyboard, or Control N if I was on a PC, and here's my untitled number 2 here that I'm going to build my Polytilde instance of my synthesizer. So first thing I need is a new object, N on my keyboard here. This is where the input, actually let's make the unpack so we can see sort of side by side what this note number and velocity, what they're doing. So here's my unpack, where this would be my velocity, this would be my note number, and I'm going to put that through a scale, the velocity, because 0 to 127, which is the normal range for velocity, is a little bit too extreme for scaling amplitude of signal, which is what I'm going to do in the end. So I'm going to make a scale N on my keyboard here. Scale is the object. We've seen scale before, I believe, but scale takes 4 or 5 values, arguments. There's the input range, which is 0 to 127. There's the output range, which would be 0 to 1 if you're dealing with audio. And you can give it some kind of exponential scaling value, so instead of being linear, this is some kind of way of making it non-linear, so that it's not just louder, it's actually more kind of sounds more linear, would could get into that, but I'm getting confused already. Alright, so it says here when I scroll over there, well it does, it says exponential scaling value. I'm just putting something kind of random in there. 1.03 is a scaling base value. Alright, here comes my velocity. Going into the scale, I guess I'm going to take now a look at this frequency over here. Instead of using M to F, which is what I think we did with MIDI style values before, I'm going to multiply these note numbers, if you like, to call them that, by 50. So this is actually going to be harmonics of a note that would be 50 hertz, which is somewhere kind of like G sharp down there in the low bass. Then we're going to have a cycle tilde. We've seen one of these before, and that's just a cosine oscillator. And this, another new object here for multiplying the amplitude of this oscillator. We don't want it just to be, oops, wrong side. We don't want it just to be on all the time. We want to turn it on and off. That's what this amplitude is about. And maybe we'll be nice and ramp that over time. I'll make a new object here. Pack this amplitude value, which is a float, so we need the floating point there. 0 over 20 millisecond ramps. Sure. This is where, in between here, this is where you could put some kind of ADSR or some kind of amplitude envelope, but I'm just going for a simple up over 20, down over 20. Another new object for our line tilde. That's what's going to create the ramp for the amplitude. Very good. And then there's our amplitude coming out there. And this actually, for something we're going to load into poly tilde, is going to be an out. So we're going to make a new object and out with a tilde because it is a signal. Argument is 1 because it is the first outlet, or it will be the first outlet. And we can hook up our out tilde like so. We also need an in tilde, I mean not an in tilde, but just an in, because we've got this list coming in here that's going to trigger notes. So in with the value 1. And we'll hook this up over here to actually make the voice allocation work the way I want it to, the sort of polyphonic voice allocation. I'm also going to want to use an object called this poly. So over here we'll make a new object called this poly tilde. And what this poly tilde does is really just reports information about the instance of the or the voice that is being loaded into the poly tilde. You can also get the instance number out with a bang. I think that's how you get that out. But hooking this up to the velocity here, when it gets a 0 velocity, well, look, we can see over here, int sets voice busy. So that means that when we have a non-zero velocity coming through here, it'll tell the poly tilde that this voice is busy. Then when it gets a 0 coming out of this velocity outlet here, or this velocity in the list, it will tell it, the poly tilde, it's not busy and therefore can be stolen, or not stolen but used. So there's that. We need to save this as something to load it into the poly tilde on our other patch. So I'm going to save it on my desktop as fun. Okay, fun.maxpat. Okay. As long as you remember where you saved it, that's going to be important. We can leave it open, just leave it in the background back there.